Yep. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the How to Enter 2026 Scholastic Awards Writing Juror panel. My name is Juliana. I work for the Alliance for Young Artists and Writers as the Senior Manager of Program Strategy. I'm joined today by my colleague Julia, who will, and two of our lovely former jurors, Zainab and Zay. We will be hearing from them shortly about their experience judging for the awards, their experience as literary professionals. I'm also joined by two of my colleagues, Chim and Sumin, who will be in the chat and in the Q&A, helping to moderate and answer questions and forward them along to us and our lovely jurors. A couple housekeeping notes. This webinar is being recorded and may appear on our Scholastic Gold Key YouTube page. If you don't want to be recorded, you can just stay as a spectator, off screen, off camera. Closed captioning is also available. You have to click on the CC at the bottom of your Zoom window. And lastly, we do have both a Q&A box and a Zoom chat open. So you can use the chat to chat with each other, introduce yourselves, but try to put questions for the jurors into the Q&A box because that has the best chance of not getting buried. And that is where Chim and Sumin will be keeping an eye on questions from there. The agenda for today, we're going to go over briefly just an overview of the awards and how they work. We'll go a little bit more in depth into the judging criteria, and then the main event, we'll be hearing from our panelists. We have some prepared questions that we're going to ask them about, and then the floor will be open to you all to ask your questions. You guys also, many of you submitted questions ahead of time, and so we'll do our best to answer as many questions as we can. We're not going to be able to answer every single one. I would encourage you that if you have a question that's very specific to your circumstances, you can always submit that to us at artandwriting.org/contact. Okay, so a little bit about the Alliance. As I mentioned before, I work for the Alliance for Young Artists and Writers, the nonprofit that presents the Scholastic Art and Writing Awards. While many folks think that we are Scholastic, that's actually, while we have a very close working relationship with Scholastic, we are a distinct entity focused solely on the awards. Some fun facts about the awards last year, nearly 110,000 teens submitted over 310,000 works of art and writing to the 2025 Scholastic Awards. So that's over 14,000 gold keys in art and 5,000 gold keys in writing at the regional level, and close to 3,000 national medals across all categories. Who is eligible for the awards? Any creative teens based in the US or Canada, you have to be at least 13 years of age. If you are 12 turning 13, you are eligible to make an account to submit the day of your 13th birthday. So if that is before your regional deadline, that means you can join us this year. But if it's even one day later, unfortunately, that does mean that you will have to join us next year. You have to be in grades 7 through 12 in a US or Canadian school. All types of schools, private, public, charter, as well as homeschool students based in those two countries are welcome to join. Traditional school attendees will be placed into a region based on their school's location. If you are homeschooled, you will be, or attend a virtual school, you will be placed in accordance with your home address. How do you submit? Well, you create an account at portal.artandwriting.org. You upload your original work, and then you complete payment, or you can request a fee waiver. All fee waivers are available for use for everyone through the checkout payment option. There's no additional forms that need to be filled out. I will actually fast forward really quickly to keep talking about payment here. It's $10 per entry and $30 per portfolio. As I mentioned before, fee waivers are available for anyone, and we welcome and encourage you to use them if needed. But also, if you are able to pay, we ask that you please do. Your nominal entry fee helps us and our regional partners put on exhibitions and celebrations and these awards each year. Just to go back really quickly, deadlines vary by region. So they can be as early as December 1 next month. We'll be here before we know it. And they stretch into early January. So you can find your regional deadline by using our region checker on our website at artandwriting.org /regions, I believe. But it's also at the very top of the screen. Regional announcement day will be on Wednesday, January 28th. And so that's when you will log back into your portal to see if and what awards you may have won. Okay. Moving on, there are 29 categories of art and writing to choose from. You can read the category descriptions on our website. They are each very detailed and specific. If you have any questions about which category to enter in, you can reach out for more guidance. However, I want to say that we do really try to honor what category folks enter in. So by and large, we don't move. We don't move entries between categories unless it has been requested by the teen or educator. I want to draw attention briefly to the two senior-only portfolio categories, art portfolio and writing portfolio. So all of our other categories are open to all teens in grades 7 through 12. The two portfolio categories are for seniors only and consist of 6 individual works, plus a brief artist statement and personal statement. You can enter previously awarded works into again, from previous years. So save your awarded works, save those highlights. And those two categories, we provide 16 gold medal, the 16 gold medal portfolio recipients with a $12,500 scholarship, and the silver medal portfolio winners with a $2,000 scholarship. So those are some of our largest scholarships. They're very exciting and open to seniors only. A little bit more about the judging criteria. So these are our 3 named criteria: originality, skill, and emergence of personal voice and vision. So our first and main and largest is originality. So we really want to hear from you. There's no formula. The best pieces of art are what speak to you, your experiences, your perspective. We can't say it enough that we don't want to hear what your parents or teachers or idols have to say. We want this is your submission, this is your art, and this is your voice. Work must also be copyright claim free. So if you're submitting videos in any art categories, they can't use copyrighted music, and they cannot be AI generated. You can read more about our copyright and plagiarism and AI policies on our website. And again, any questions can go to artandwriting.org/contact. Note that we can't tell you ultimately if your work is original enough to be submitted to the awards. That is something that you have to decide for yourself. A few notes about skill. We related to originality, I should also add that fan art and fan fiction and existing copies of work are not eligible. Even if they are really high quality skill wise, they violate they're not in line with our originality guidelines and what we're really looking for is skill in conversation with your original voice and vision. So a couple other notes is that we are not looking for, again, skill alone. For writing, while we absolutely are looking at things like grammar and punctuation and sentence structure, it's all tying together in and how it's supportive of the larger vision of your artwork. And finally, personal voice or vision. This is really the culmination of the first two. A couple other notes about it is that jurors don't see any biographical details about you beyond your grade. And so you're being judged on your work alone. There are no additional statements beyond your work that will be submitted. An exception to that is portfolios. As I mentioned, they do have artist statements and personal statements, but all 27 other categories do not carry any additional statements. And we want to know, just to keep reiterating, what is important to you? What do you want the reader or viewer to see or feel or keep thinking about after we're done? And I think we'll hear a little bit more about the experience of continuing to see and hear, to see and remember works long after we've read them from two of our lovely jurors who are joining us today. So with that, I'll hand it over to my colleague, Julia.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. And thank you especially to our two jurors. Zay Amsbury and Zainab Sen were both jurors in the 2025 program year. They read, if you submitted work, they may have read it. But as Juliana said, it's anonymous, and they judged your work purely based on its merit. So let me introduce our two jurors, and then we'll ask them, the experts, what it is that they look for and think about while they're reading. And they have, of course, some guidance from us, but we really have all of your work read by professional, qualified writers, editors, agents, and you'll see that when I introduce Zay and Zainab. So to start, Zay Amsbury is a playwright and native Californian, currently living in New Haven, Connecticut. He's taught creative writing for over 20 years and is the current chair of the creative writing department at the California State School for the Arts. His theater credits include The Thing in Jesse's Room, Fertile Ground Theater Festival, The Damon, a 10-episode dramatic podcast commissioned by Wondery Media / Audible, Lady Shade and the Yellow King, On Guard Entertainment, and many more. Zay earned his BFA in dramatic writing from NYU's Tisch School of the Arts and his MFA in playwriting from the New School for Drama. As you can see, not too shabby. And we're going to ask Zay some questions in a moment, but let me introduce also Zainab Sen. Zainab Sen graduated from Sarah Lawrence College with a BA in Literature and Creative Writing. Following graduation, she honed her skills as an agent at the Jennifer Lyons Literary Agency. A few years later, Zainab moved to WordLink Literary Agency, where she now works as a senior agent and foreign rights agent. At WordLink, Zainab represents her own lists of authors. She primarily focuses on nonfiction works and young adult books, fluent in Spanish and Turkish and English. Zainab is drawn to literary and historical works of fiction and narrative nonfiction of international appeal. So I hope that you can tell, all of you listening, that we really do have such wonderful, talented, accomplished readers for your work. And here are two of them right now. As Juliana said, I'm going to get us started by asking them some questions, and then we have some of your questions as well to ask them. So welcome, both Zay and Zainab. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. And the first question I'll ask is, what drew you to being a juror? Let's start with, I'm sorry, my video froze, but if
Julia first there for a second. But I heard the full question. Again, it was what drew you to being a juror? And why don't we start with in alphabetical order, Z-A, Zayn.
It's rare that first name alphabetical and not the last one. Uh, what drew me to this? I think mainly it was my uh I knew about the awards from my students at the arts program that the summer arts program that I teach at. And then my partner who is in publishing mentioned that they were looking for more jurors, and I thought, I mean, I have a lot of experience with writing from high school age students, so I thought it might be uh, interesting to see what the range of writing was that was coming from all over the United States from younger people. So mainly it was curiosity.
What about you, Zainab?
Um, I actually knew about the awards since I think I was since either high school or college, so a very long time, and I long wanted to participate in them in some way because they do generate some incredible works from what I've seen, both from years ago and this year. And last year I came across a little social media post essentially about a search for jurors, and I thought that that would be my opportunity to contribute to young writers finding their voice and getting their work out there for potentially for the first time.
Great to hear, and I love that you found us through social media, and the old-fashioned way, Zay. So
Yeah.
both are very viable these days. And I don't have Julia's list of questions, but I know what was on them was also uh what what works. I guess I should say what do you look for in a work?
Should I go or should Zay?
Oh, you take it. You go first this time.
Okay. Um, what do I look for? What I found I was most drawn to in the works that I read was a certain sense of vulnerability, not necessarily in the sense that the author was trying to share something personal about them, which sometimes and often they were, but the vulnerability of being yourself and not being afraid to share your voice, share your own unique style, embed bits of your personal story, even sometimes, into the tale or your poem or story that you were weaving. I think when authors did that, regardless of whether they've written anything before or not, their writing really tended to shine.
I really resonate with that. I
Mm,
I think that one of the things that really resonates with me, or that the writing that I find appealing, is when I don't know, it's sort of hard to put into words. I think the voice thing comes into play when there's a unique voice, and it's kind of tricky because anytime anyone can kind of connect with their own unique and individual relationship to language, they have an original voice. We all have an original voice, but having the ability to put that on the page and to use to tell a story or to share a clear image or to communicate an idea while also using your own voice and being sort of with your own relationship to language is difficult, except when it's incredibly easy. But regardless, it's not something that everyone can do. It takes practice, it takes skill. And when people were doing that, when it didn't seem like what the writer was trying to communicate, or the images or the observations or the use of language was like received, it was like the writer wasn't being like, oh, I think this is what good writing is. They were like, I'm trying to communicate something. How can I communicate it in a way that no one else can, and in a way that's clear? And that's the stuff that really landed for me.
mm,
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. The sort of authenticity of it all, which is a word that I think is thrown around a lot, but does still have meaning. We hope. We believe, I should say, at the Alliance that it does still have meaning. Um, can you describe the a outstanding piece of work, anonymously from that you read last year, and what about it stood out to you?
I'll go. I thought about this a lot. And the one I landed on was I can't refer back to it, so this is all from memory. If I remember correctly, it was called like Losing My Marbles, or I'm Losing My Marbles or something like that. And it was a poem. And the thing that struck me about it was how simple it was. The title was like I'm losing my marbles, which, sort of like a colloquialism of like I'm going nuts or whatever.
Mm.
Um, but then the lines for the first like half of the poem were just images, like really simple images, like from school, like backpacks on hooks and kids in the schoolyard and like, lonely with my lunch, just really, really simple, not rhymed, not like with no like poetic form. But then slowly the images it became clear that these images, like it was the writer's attempt to communicate to another person their age, and we're having real difficulty with it and almost like stumbling over the words. And then the words became the marbles. So like what the writer was losing were the marbles of the words. And then marbles, it became a metaphor for words, but it was all done so simply and so clearly, like I think sometimes, especially when you start writing, you think, oh, I got to use them big words, like got to make sure these words are big and the sentences are complex. And this writer was really just using the words that they had, you know, um, and the vocabulary wasn't wild, or it wasn't big, or wasn't huge, but it was so clear. I love the clarity of it. Yeah.
That sounds like a very powerful work. The one that I recall, I don't exactly recall the title either, but I think it was something along the lines of "You Are What You Eat." It was a short story that was built on that concept, where this author was clearly struggling with her body image issues, and whenever she ate, say, pizza or ice cream or a cookie, she would see parts of it manifest on her own body, like when she looked into the mirror. And I remember the descriptions of, the ice cream melting off of her face, or the cookie crumbling from her hair, and how vivid they were. And then as the story progresses and she starts forming a healthier relationship with food, both
Mm,
eating healthy stuff and occasionally treating herself, the way she viewed those elements that she still saw in the mirror actually changed. And I thought that was a really nice touch. It was like, because what she saw didn't change, but how she saw it changed. And that really resonated with me. And it delivered her message in a very simple but powerful way as well, I think.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm hearing from both of you that, Zay, you were saying images, and by that we don't mean literal pictures,
Mm.
but that the work was so evocative of those. It was as if you were seeing images, and Zainab, you were
Yeah.
also saying that it was so vivid. So really that imagery, that technique is really powerful.
Mm.
And that gets at our next question, which is how do you balance looking at both originality and voice and also skill?
Mm. Um, Originality for me is, I try to look at whether this person is trying to communicate a story or a message or a poem or whatever it is that feels true to them, that feels authentic, as you said before. And in something as personal as writing, that tends to usually come through. Like if you're trying to copy J.D. Salinger, or not, becomes very obvious, and if you're trying to be you, becomes very obvious to see as well. So with originality, I try to pay attention to that. With skill, it's not really big words or long sentences or complex sentences that I pay attention to. Is it's clarity, like Zay said, actually, because clarity is actually can actually be surprisingly difficult to achieve. A single sentence can come to mean many different things. And at the same time, you don't want, a piece of writing to just say she was sad. You want to convey sadness by making the reader feel it, and that can be really tricky to do. So I try to see, you know, is this author being true to to themselves, while also trying to see how clear and thoughtfully are they trying to convey what they're trying to convey, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I really I agree with that. I think like if I think there's a way in which originality is like striving for originality is a to me is sort of overrated, and it I mean, aside from what Zainab was talking about, like if what you're presenting is like trying to write just like Toni Morrison, or trying to just
Mm,
write just like David Foster Wallace, or trying to write just like whoever, while it can be a very, very helpful thing to do for your own personal growth, when it comes to your own writing, that like that sort of thing can really get in the way. Like for me, the real originality comes, I think, from having the courage to figure out what it is you want to say, and having it be okay if it's simple, having it be okay if it's like, I mean, like that, I mean, the poem that I mentioned, it was about uh, a, a high school age person having a hard time talking to another person who they were interested in. You know, like that's an experience everyone's had. There's nothing original about it, but in trying to get across exactly how they felt in that moment, really trying to communicate it as clearly as possible, they arrived at this simple, clear, original way of communicating it. And the goal wasn't to be original, the goal was to clearly communicate something. Um, and I agree. Like, I think that's a really nice way to think of skill. The one thing I want to say about voice, because we often think of voice as like word choice or like cadence or like, you know, sentence length, and it is all that stuff. Voice is also like subject matter. And it's also like where you write about, you know, like if you live in, I don't know, like outside of Sacramento in Yolo County, or you live on Central Park West, or you live like in some teeny tiny itsy bitsy little town up in Vermont. Not everybody lives in those places. And if you can even just communicate what it feels like to wake up in the morning in those places, then there's something there. So all I'm saying is that a lot of different things go into voice, and it's not just like word choice, and the shape of the story and stuff like that.
Thank you so much. That was a great answer. I'm back. I'm sorry for
mm,
the frozen moment. Um, One thing that I think may be encouraging to our audience also is how long this question lasts into an adult professional writer's life. And Zay, I think I was going to say, sort of as a lifelong reader, right? This idea of what's your voice, what's your writer's voice, how to write a work that feels original. These are all challenges that actually writers of all ages struggle with. Um, Zainab, can you speak to working with with a professional adult writer at all about how, some of these challenges? Because I do think that sometimes this happens even when this isn't just a question for the Scholastic Art and Writing Awards. This is a real artistic question. How do you write what's authentic to yourself?
I think the trick I've discovered is if you're writing, or some parts of your writing at least, evokes a little bit of discomfort, because there's a quote that I really like, which is, growth happens when out of your comfort zone. That is absolutely true, especially in writing. Your writing should push you, which is not to say, you should try different styles of writing. There will be core elements of your writing that you always go for. So maybe you write like writing shorter sentences or shorter narratives. Maybe you're more cinematic in writing. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, you know, pushing yourself towards subject matters that you might not necessarily want to feel ready to share immediately, but experimenting with them and being willing to be a little bit vulnerable in your writing, and writing entirely for yourself, and being willing to go back to the thing that you've written and going, okay, how do I edit this and improve upon what I've said? Because I haven't met a single writer that is such an amazing writer that their first draft is the perfect draft and it will get published as is. Um, so being willing to edit and being willing to take some critical feedback is also part of the journey, I would say. And being willing to acknowledge that, your voice is going to change and grow just as you're going to change and grow, and that is absolutely okay.
That's such a wonderful answer. Zay, do you have anything to add about how this question isn't just about this one competition, isn't just about being a young writer, but actually continues on through a lifelong career?
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with everything that Zainab was saying. Um, and one thing Zainab said that made me think that might be useful is like like when you're writing something, like as you're at every stage, um, is so there are different kinds of writing, right? So there's like copy editing, which is sort of like what you're at the very end when you're like,
Mm,
oh, like is this word spelled right? Is this really a sentence? Stuff like if that's the realm you're working in. Then there's
mm,
like revisions, where maybe you're working with an editor, you're sort of like putting stuff together. But then in the beginning, when you first start writing that first draft, that first like sort of rough, wild exploration, which is exactly where you start to see where your voice is, um, it's helpful to remember that those are different places. Like if you bring the point of view of copy editing into your first draft, then it's really hard to find where your voice is, right? And this is true for everyone. Like writers evolve over time, and if they don't let themselves have that wild exploratory first draft that nobody sees, then it's very difficult to grow. So as you're working on these pieces, if you're thinking, oh, what is the judge going to be thinking when they read it when it's submitted, as you're composing, it's going to kind of like get in the way of that authenticity and that finding that emerging voice that we're talking about.
mm. And that's 100% right. It's gonna be a roadblock for you to subconsciously at least get over.
Poor Julia, I do believe, might be
Oh,
frozen once more. I thought that she might have been pausing for the one for your wonderful answers, but I do believe that she hasn't blinked for a moment. Um, okay, so I think the last, or no, not my last question, but what would you advise students to think about when selecting their work or what works they want to enter for the awards?
Zay, you want to
Like,
go first?
yeah. So like selecting like they're looking at five different pieces and they're trying to pick which one to submit to the
Hmm.
um yeesh, I don't know. I mean, it's funny because this also makes me think of what it's like to be a writer, like if if you are someone who writes sort of vignette-y, slice of life-y, observational, quiet pieces, you're not going to want to submit to like a science fiction magazine. If you write like really complicated, heady, abstract, avant-garde plays, you're not going to want to submit them to your local community theater that does Gilbert and Sullivan, you know? Um, and so if you're looking at 5 different pieces, then I guess you're probably going to want to look for sort of like the Goldilocks space, like the one that is expressive of who you are and is also really clear and has enough of who you are to be really distinct. And like Zaynep said, maybe something that you're maybe a little afraid to share, you
Mm,
know, that might push the boundaries a little bit of what you think this Alliance for Young Writers and Artists would accept. But you probably don't want to submit your super extreme, truly wild, most experimental thing you've ever written, you
mm,
know. But there's like a space in the middle, I imagine. So maybe that might be a way of thinking about it. And also, like, no, that's it. That's all I have to say about that.
I think that's a great way of putting it, and I agree with everything that you've said. I would add only that you could consider out of those 5 pieces, the one that you feel most passionate about, because there are some pieces where the writing just takes off on its own and you're so into it. Like if you have had that much fun and joy, or if you've been that invested in writing this piece, then odds are that might end up being your strongest piece. So consider that one for sure. And another is choose the piece that you feel like you've written most for yourself, be that your present self, past self, or future self. Like choose the piece that you would have wanted to read if this were given to you by someone.
Interesting way to put it. Thank you, Zaina. And I want to add as a quick administrative note that students can submit, there's not a cap on the number of entries that a student can submit. But to what Zay and Zainab are saying is that it is not necessarily, it's not a quality versus quantity game. You do not better your chances by submitting every poem you have ever written. And that being thoughtful about and thinking really about what this your entry speaks to, and if it is speaking to you, that's really what makes your odds better, not sheer number of entries.
Mm,
Yeah, that's a great point. I do also want to support what Zay and Zenab said, which is that we want all of our young people who are submitting to feel comfortable. You know, no, do not hesitate to protect yourself. If there is something you don't want to disclose for any reason, doesn't make you feel safe, keep that to yourself. And also, there aren't any constraints for the Scholastic Art and Writing Awards on our side. So some questions in the chat have been about, is political work okay? Absolutely. Is work that speaks about your faith or religious beliefs acceptable? Absolutely. We work really hard to recruit jurors from all different backgrounds who are unbiased. So you should feel free to submit all work. And like Zay said, if you have something that's avant-garde that doesn't totally fit into a category, it's not quite like anything you've ever seen before, that's great. This is the place for that. Find the category that most fits it. But there aren't any constraints on our side. There are no themes that are off limits. This is a safe space from our perspective. So just to clarify that. There have been a couple more questions in the chat. I think that we've touched on this, but can you both, either of you, say something about confidence or self-doubt? What about worrying that your work isn't good enough? Whoever feels like they're more ready. This also, I would say, is a feeling, unfortunately, that doesn't go away. Whoever
Yeah.
feels Yeah, all right, Zay, go ahead.
Well, because this is something that comes up at CISA often, I remember this was really, really intense in 2023 as people were coming back from the pandemic, and I remember I was talking with some students, and what we ended up talking about was how like when it comes to feeling like you're not good enough or that your work isn't up to snuff, like there's good news and there's bad news. The bad news is, as long as you write, you're going to have those feelings sometimes. The good news is, as long as you write, you're going to have those feelings sometimes. So like it, it, those feelings don't reflect how other people will end up seeing the work, or how you'll end up seeing the work in different moments, or how you'll grow as you go along. Um, I mean, I was just talking to a friend of mine who's a playwright who just moved to LA, and he was successful as a playwright, and he's starting to get the meetings that you get in Hollywood. And the thing that surprised him was like it didn't matter who he met. He he every successful writer that he met so far in LA is either honest with him about how they too have doubts, no matter what happens, like no matter how much money they've made, how successful they are, or they're in sort of like blowhard denial state where where they just sort of like, they're blowhards and they sort of pretend like they don't have those feelings. So I would say having those feelings and being honest with them to your fellow writers, to your mentors, to your friends, like it's going to be there. It's a-okay. I feel that way when I write sometimes. Like it's like, well, welcome to the family.
That's the sign you're doing something right, right? It's a little bit like Zainab said, maybe with the discomfort. Is that right? Like
Oh,
if you,
definitely. It's that imposter feeling or that negative feeling or whatever you want to call it, that's gonna be there regardless of how old you are with writing and with anything else. And the advice I try to actually give my authors whenever we're working on a manuscript, or whenever someone wants to send me a manuscript is it's better to say I tried this and I'm not really happy that I did than to say I wish I had. Because one is going to get you some answers, some feedback, some uh, sense of accomplishment in some way at the very least, and it might end up with you winning the award and proving yourself wrong. The other is going to end in regrets and what ifs, and the what if feeling is never a good feeling to have to sit with.
so fail greatly. I actually
Yeah.
have I actually have my next question, our next question is on the similar topic. So what happens if I lose is one of the questions I'm seeing, or what happens if I've lost before, right? If I've submitted
Mm,
and I didn't win, then what? What does it mean? Should I keep submitting? What does it mean about my writing? What do you do? What do you do with failure? What do I do with failure?
mm. So I'm going to use a bit of personal experience to answer this question because I think it's relevant. So part of my job, for those that don't know, is sending authors manuscripts to publishing houses, pitching them, and hopefully getting them book deals. Which means that I get plenty of yeses, but I also get a lot of nos. And then I have to take those no's back and talk to the author and say, I'm going to send this book to all these other people. But in the meantime, let's rework this manuscript. Let's try XYZ using the comments, the feedback that we've had, and see what else we can do with this manuscript. And that kickstarts another editorial round for us, usually. Or sometimes it turns into the author saying, well, this book didn't work, but but I really like this idea that I got from, this book, and I'd like to recreate this other work based off of it. And they'll try that, and that one will sell. So failure sucks. It is a horrible feeling, and I and everyone else on the planet will encounter it at least once in their lifetime. But it is also the most useful tool you can possibly get on the road to success because it is something that you can use to go back to your writing, to see how you can make it better, or to come up with something new that you might feel more passionate about, or more enthusiastic about, that you want to share later on. So yeah, failure, if you don't get win the award, then that'll be a hurtful moment, but it's something that you can use, and I would encourage you to do that.
Yeah, and
Go ahead, Zay.
I'm sorry, I would just add to that, uh, like it doesn't change who you are, you know, you know, I don't know if you ever watch like the Academy Awards and like the best picture comes up and you're like, now wait a minute, that was definitely not the best movie this year, you know,
Mm,
like winning this award or getting accepted into a summer arts program or you know, any of this stuff, it really doesn't change who you are. It's just feedback from like a person
mhm,
like me who read it and had a thought about it. And it doesn't really change who you are. Um, that said, I will tell a super brief story with this. Um, we at CISA, we accept like, I don't know, like 15% of students who apply to the writing program. And there was this student, I won't say her name, but there's a student who applied and got rejected. And then she applied again and got on the waiting list and ended up in this sort of other program that we have that isn't the main program. And then she applied to the main program again, got in, and ended up being awarded a scholarship that we offer in the program. So like it was just absolute determination on her part. Um, and yeah,
Persist.
so yeah,
Yeah,
persist.
yeah, I think that I'm sure that's definitely what I was going to say also, and I'm sure that's something that Zainab can speak to us about, which is that almost every writer you like um, has been rejected for something, and it
oh, so many.
so many, right? And as they said, it gives you it's feedback. It's
Yeah.
not a judgment on your person. It's not even necessarily a judgment on your art. It's feedback. I am gonna jump in for just a second and answer some technical questions that we're getting in the chat about what judging looks like at the Scholastic Art and Writing Awards. So when you enter your work in a certain category, your work is read by always at least two jurors from, again, all across the country with varying levels of experience, but they're all considered carefully selected. So every work is read by at least two jurors, and your work is read in comparison with other young people who are within your age cohort. If you're a seventh grader and you're submitting a novel, it will not be ever compared to a senior's novel. So that's something that's just really good to know. We consider each work by grade, right? So that's always in context. Nobody is opening up the work of an eighth grader and thinking, how does this compare to Shakespeare? We're looking at each work in terms of what you've experienced so far in your life, how much writing you've done so far, and we're comparing your work. Your work is being read alongside the work of your peers, your peers in your age group. So that's something to know. The number of jurors in your region differs, but there are about 200 jurors that read works at the national level, is something I'll say. So if your work advances to the national level, there's a group of 200 really qualified, really animated and experienced folks who will read your works. So it's something, this is a really special and unique opportunity to be a person just starting out in your artistic career and having true experienced eyes looking at your work and reading that material. So that is just to answer that one more question. I see that there are some folks who are joining us who are a little bit asking about that. We are getting a little bit close to the end of our meeting here. I just want to ask our jurors one or two more questions. What inspires you as people who are readers, as people who work in the literary arts, who are creators and or who want to keep your creative brain engaged? What would you say you do to be inspired? Maybe you're getting ready, you're stretching, you're getting ready to read a nice batch of student work for the Scholastic Art and Writing Awards. You want to set your tone, you want to set your brain. What do you do? Which of you feels more ready? I'm trying to look at your faces to see who feels more ready with their answer.
I can go.
Yeah.
I will usually take like a brief walk to like clear my mind of whatever else I was doing beforehand, if I was doing anything at all. And then I'll get cozy somewhere, like I'll either on my reading couch or in my study, and have a nice cup of tea or coffee, and no phones, no electronics for a little bit, set period of time, and just take it one piece at a time and try to really relax with them, engage with them, and hear the voice of the author, essentially.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
I feel often sort of lost and confused in the world, like I'll
Mm.
read the newspaper and I'll be like, okay, but what's going on? I feel like I read a book about this at some point. And so there's like this sort of fog all the time. And when I watch a movie or I read a book or I see a play, or any work of art, then I feel like there's this moment of clarity. There's like this moment where the fog parts and I kind of see or feel or think what the writer is writing. And
Mm.
um, to me, there's no difference between the difference between a young writer and a beginner or a beginner. Like I'm teaching an adult beginner course right now, and it's fascinating. Like the difference between a beginner and an experienced writer is just time and experience. But like each individual piece, whether it's from an eighth grade or a ninth grade or 10th grade, it doesn't matter. It's still a person experiencing the world. And if they can get across their experience or their thoughts or their feelings, and for a moment for me, like the fog parts and I can see through the window that they're making for me. And I love it.
That's so great, Zay, and actually that speaks a little bit to one of the questions I'm seeing in the chat as well, which is that some folks feel like there isn't a lot going on in their lives, right? But I want to invoke something that I'm sure some of our jurors know about, which is that there have been really, really beautiful experimental works of writing that are really famous, that play with exactly this focus, right? There's a writer, George Perec, who did a whole study, a work on exhausting a place in Paris. So the writer sat down in a single square in the city he was living in at the time, and he did it over and over and over again and wrote every single thing he could see, wrote every single thing he experienced, that he overheard, wrote what his legs felt like against the chair, wrote about what the cars sounded like going by. And this is a really respected piece of writing. And it was about, in a certain way, nothing. It was about what it is like to be a human and have your eyes open and hear things and experience things, and what it's like to have maybe the same thing happen over and over again, be in the same corner, being in the same spot. So if you feel like there isn't a ton going on in your life, as we say, lean into that, right? Include some details about what it feels like to feel as though you're waking up to the same day all the time. Write about what it feels like to feel like you're eating your breakfast over and over again, but is it the same breakfast you ate yesterday? So that's valid. That's wonderful. That's wonderful stuff to write about. We have one more technical question I'm going to answer, which is about portfolios. The question, and portfolios are you can only submit a portfolio if you're a senior in 12th grade, okay? So I'm sure we will have some questions about that also. Those of you who are in that position, who are seniors in 12th grade, the question is about, can there be themes across multiple genres? And yes, definitely, we'd love to see that you're thinking and working through some similar problems. I think a lot of writers approach some similar themes over and over again. That makes sense. So I know our guidelines for the portfolio suggest that you show us a range of different types of writing. That's great. Please do send in a critical essay, a poem, flash fiction. But yes, of course, that's wonderful. And it would make perfect sense if there are some repeated themes in there, because those are the ones that are animating your work, motivating you, and that you're writing towards. We have just one more technical question. Do all jurors read all different kinds of work? And the answer is yes, for the most part, especially in national. The jurors, no matter what their specific background is, we ask them to read all across age groups, genres, etc. So there are, of course, many more questions in the chat than we had time to answer. If your question is specific, again, please write to our Contact Us page, and we'll try to get that answered. And I'm just going to run through. I'm going to also thank Zeynep and Zay so much for sharing their experience with us here tonight, and also sharing their experience with us last year in reading so many student works. I really appreciate it. And I hope that those of you who are here with us tonight can see how special it is. Can sort of send your thanks also that we have such accomplished jurors who are looking forward to this next generation. Just before Juliana, are you able to take this?
Can folks hear me?
Yes.
Brilliant. We just, as a couple final wrap items, and again, huge thanks to Zay and Zeynep. These are our general insider tips are to review your categories, choose wisely. We talked a little bit about choosing your works and your categories. Do not include personal identifiers. Your work is judged anonymously. So please edit out any your name, your personal biographical information. If it reflects your experience, please include that we're not saying to re-edit your work. Don't have your name at the top of the page. Review our originality guidelines and cite all of your sources, especially if it's a classroom project, especially depending on your form. If you're getting inspiration from places, if you're quoting specific other sources, that's absolutely allowed and encouraged. Cite your sources and complete your entries before Thanksgiving. Deadlines are as early as December 1, as we've said. I also want to add that if you have any technical issues, if you can't find your school or anything like that, it is best to give yourself a couple days or even weeks lead time to get those issues resolved. We'll go more into these scholarships in depth at what I should say is an upcoming webinar next week, How to Enter for Teens, where we'll go through a portal demonstration and talk through exactly how to enter and what these scholarship opportunities are more in depth. This is a brief overview. We talked about the portfolio, some of these American Voices and Visions and Best in Grade, everyone is eligible for. New York Life per block and Flaunt It, you have to decide to opt in for or apply to. These are some of our notable alumni. Your name could be on this list in a few years. What a thought, how exciting. And finally, thank you to our sponsors who make all of our work possible. All right, that is all we have for today. Thank you so much again to our jurors, to my colleagues Julia and Sumin and Chim, and to all of you for spending this time with us. We look forward to seeing what you create.
Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good night.
Good night,
Have a
y'all.
good night.